Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Activity Strong Executive Edition webinar. My name is Megan McMahon, and I am the Director of Strategic Development here at Link Senior. For today's webinar event, we are providing one free NAB, NCAP, NCCDP, NCTRC, and NZSRDT CEU credit. And to be eligible for those credits, you do need to remain on this webinar for the full hour today. At the end of the webinar, I will provide the required post-webinar CEU survey evaluation link in the webinar room chat box, and I will also send it by email this afternoon. So please be sure to check your spam folder in case it lands there. The CEU survey must be completed by midnight Eastern Time this Thursday. If you have any questions, please email us at webinars@linksenior.com. CEU certificates will be issued before the end of the day next week on Tuesday, February 14th. I will now hand it over to Charles D. Vilmorin, CEO and co-founder of Link Senior. Charles?
Thank you so much, Megan, and welcome everyone. Welcome from very gloomy Portland, Oregon, and I hear it's the norm here, or some kind of norm. So anyway, welcome everyone. This is our February 7th, 2023 Activity Strong. It's an executive edition where obviously we remain true to the mission of Activity Strong about acknowledging the amazing work of activity and life enrichment directors. We aim to educate and empower them, but we also try to have topics to expand the line of vision and the different tools available for what we consider the most kind of essential position in senior living, which is engagement. I am beyond excited to introduce you both to both of our speakers today, and I'll do that in a second. The topic today is senior living insights from moving to resident engagement success. And just a little bit of background about Activity Strong. It was started by Link Senior, but we obviously do this amazing work in partnership with Activity Connection, NAP, and NCAP. And for the people that are joining us for the very first time, as you might realize, the chat gets super busy. Make sure you select speaking to everyone so that everyone can benefit from your contribution. And as a note, because the chat gets so busy, if you have specific questions for the panelists, please direct them to the Q&A. And I know that Nate and Melissa have prepared a few questions for all of us, so this will be an interactive and very interesting discussion. So a little bit of background before we get started. Like Megan mentioned, my name is Charles, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Link Senior. We believe that all people are cool, and senior living is Activity Strong. These are two initiatives that we started to not only kind of give back to the industry supported, but fight against ageism, because we do not believe that segregation based on age should exist. And it's a great way to level and honor the people, the residents that we serve. And obviously, as I mentioned, Activity Strong is our way for us to give back and again elevate the engagement position. If any one of you wonders what Link Senior is, we are a resident engagement platform. We're honored to support team members like you across organizations like yours in touching the lives of more than 50,000 residents daily. So that's a great honor. And we're actually very proud of our work. It's all about, again, helping you do more of what you try to do every day, augment the existing team members. And one of the reasons why we're also proud of our work is that it is evidence-based. So if you have any questions, always please feel free to join. But again, welcome, not join, contact us afterwards. But anyway, thanks for being here. Excited to have you all. The topic today is something that I personally felt kind of an essential and almost kind of a little bit broken aspect of our industry, which is that we, in the sales process, do certain things. We try to kind of understand the needs and preferences of the residents and the families, and often that information or these processes don't carry over systematically in the experience that we build for our residents. And I've become very passionate about resident engagement, obviously. And I'm impressed by the work of Nate and Melissa in these two fields that today I'm excited that we bring together. So without further ado, I wanted to briefly introduce you to Nate. I've known Nate for almost, I think, 8 years, Nate. I am amazed. I joke sometimes that, I always wonder who's the smartest person in the room. Well, let me just tell you that when Nate is around, I don't have to ask that question anymore. So that's something cool. And then the other thing is Melissa. You might have seen Melissa on our webinar. There were just a few unique individuals that are able to combine passion, understanding of what our elders, the people we serve, like they're human beings, and we need to treat them as human beings, but also able to deliver on that action and that vision, but also really operationalize that. She's a true expert in the field of dementia care and life enrichment. And beyond the topic that we're going to discuss today, or they're going to discuss today without me, obviously, is I'm excited to see you both together because you share this common wanting of elevating our profession, our industry. You're passionate, but you're also super successful in doing the work. So without further ado, Nate, I'll let you take it over from here. But let me just say thank you both for joining us, and I'm very excited for this discussion.
Gosh, thank you, Charles. What a kind introduction. That's what 8 years of knowing Charles will get you is a friendly and warm webinar and a warm face when you see him out on the circuit. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here in the spirit of the chat. I'm Nate from Durham, North Carolina. Hello from Durham, North Carolina. And Melissa, hello from today? Scottsdale. So my name is Nate O'Keefe with a company called Rubric, as Charles said. Today, we're going to explore how understanding what a prospect thinks they want before they move in can help senior living providers and particularly resident engagement folks improve the resident experience once they're living there. And I'm going to start today with what in the television business is called a cold open. Cold open is when a TV show jumps right into the action before the opening credits. And so that's what we're going to do. Our theme today is what we say we want when we're trying to make a hard decision versus what we actually want or realized we want after the decision was made. So, think about all the things in your lives that we think are going to go one way and then they go another, how we thought something would feel ahead of time versus how it actually feels. And I'm going to start with something that's miles away from senior living. So give me a moment to share my screen here. Can you all see that? Melissa, can you confirm that you can see the screen? Okay, great. I'm going to guess that many of you have heard the joke, what are the 2 best days in a boat owner's life? And the answer, of course, is the day you get the boat and the day you sell the boat. This is a perfect illustration of what's called the focusing illusion. The focusing illusion is when considering a future choice, we tend to imagine one aspect above all others, which clouds our ability to make an informed decision. So in this case, we picture the perfect day. Weather is great, boat is operating at peak performance, family and friends are with us, they're smiling and laughing, and we're just creating these great memories that are going to last a lifetime. The problem is that's just part of the experience of owning the boat. Because of the focusing illusion, we're less likely to think about hitching the trailer to our Honda Pilot, driving in weekend traffic to the boat launch, troubleshooting maintenance issues, thunderstorms that pop up on summer afternoons. And we also don't think about this new threat of worry that in the back of our minds, we now have this other thing that we're kind of constantly thinking about, even if it's at a low level. And so, because as the joke goes, for a lot of boat owners, selling the boat brings some relief. When I look at this particular picture, I imagine that the kid in the front had a different focusing illusion than the parents in the back. I've got one more example that's, I think, a little bit closer to our audience and topic today, and that's here. What does it mean at the end of life when we say we want everything done, that we want to exhaust every option to preserve life? Our focusing illusion here is that we're thinking of a person that we care about and how much we want them to be alive. We're also thinking that we want to feel like we did our best, that we've honored them in our advocacy and in the choices that we made. But we're often making those choices with very little idea of what medical reality can look like. And I'm sure we have more than a few fans of the book Being Mortal by Atul Gawande on a webinar like this. And I'm quite certain that many of you have had or have daily experience in navigating families or counseling families towards what they might regard as a good death. You're painting a picture with great skill and empathy of what each path can look like and feel like, and you're trying to, whether you know it or not, to counter this focusing illusion of there's one outcome I can envision, and so that's the outcome that's going to happen. And so when we think about a decision to leave a home and to move to a senior living community, there are a number, myriad focusing illusions at play. And unfortunately, many of them cause people to delay a move to a supportive community environment. And that's where we're going to spend some time digging in today. That is our cold open, which means that it's time for our opening credits. And once again, I'll give a very special thank you to Charles and his team for giving us the opportunity to talk with you. Again, my name is Nate O'Keefe. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Rubric. And we build tools to help people make informed senior care decisions. Our mission is to bring more and better days to families and to help the organizations that care for them to grow. And I'll give you a little bit more context for that in a moment. But I'm most excited to introduce our co-host / guest panelist today, Melissa Dillon, who Charles has already introduced, but I'm going to do it again. Melissa is Corporate Director of Memory Care with SRG, which is Senior Resource Group. I met Melissa for the first time virtually just last month, and then got to tour SRG's beautiful, I'm going to try and say it, Melissa, Maravilla.
You did it, yes.
Maravilla, okay, community in Scottsdale, well, at the ASHA conference last month. Melissa, can I ask you to just tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words as we get started here?
Sure, happy to be here. Thank you so much, Nate. Thanks, Charles, for inviting me. So, hi, I'm Melissa Dillon, dementia nerd, as I like to identify. 16 years of senior living underneath my belt, and today I'm the Corporate Director of Memory Care for SRG, the Senior Resource Group, where me and my awesome Enliven director leaders choose to lead with love. We want to take a look at memory care, ensure that we are loving people a little bit differently. And I have the best dang job in the world that I get to support folks really in the autumn years of life and just understand best how we can continue to love them, who they are today. So happy to have this chat with you about what we expect versus what is really happening, because sometimes that's different and sometimes it's not, but happy to be here.
Great. Well, all right, that's perfect. And here's how we're all going to spend the next 30 or so minutes together. We're going to talk for just a few minutes about expectation management in senior living, particularly that gap between what a prospect or family member thinks life is going to be like during their research phase versus what their experience may be as a resident or family member. Then we're going to spend a lot of time looking at the data. We have tens of thousands of data points specifically around how residents think they'll spend their time or think they want to spend their time. We're going to talk for a minute about how we gather that data so you have some of that context, and then we're going to dig into that. Now that's Rubric's expertise, what people say they want. What I'll be asking Melissa and all of you listening to comment on is, how does this square with your experience? Our company on the sales and marketing side of the equation does not spend as much time with that experience in the community. So that's where I'm counting on Melissa to lead that perspective, and we'll invite you all to join in who are listening. To help us here, we're joined by Shelley Weitz, who is off camera, but she's Rubric's VP of Marketing, who will be monitoring the chat and Q&A and keeping us honest and interjecting when interjection is needed. I guess in having these discussions, our hope is that is that you all out there will have the opportunity to reflect on your own experiences with particular sensitivity to how the focusing illusion might be impacting your decision-making and the decision-making of the people that you work with. And I'll encourage you to, and I think most of you probably do this all day long anyway, is question assumptions and standard operating procedure. But think about how you can create resident experiences that effectively blend what people say they want, what they might actually mean that they want, what you know as professionals will benefit them, under the reality of what your organization is equipped to provide. And so those are some of the things we want to accomplish today. Before we go to the data, I wanted to start by asking you, Melissa, just one kind of high-level orienting question. And that's in general, do you think that prospective residents, and I'll include family members in that as well, have an accurate picture of what senior living is like ahead of time, or do they really not understand it? And I'll give you a scale of 1 to 10 to work with, knowing that you may expound upon that a little bit. So one is no idea, 10 is they really just get it 100%.
I am really sad to report that I feel that we're maybe at a 5 or a 6. It really depends on that family member or that person that is looking at senior living and what their own personal experience is. I do believe that we meet folks that tour that come in and expect to see white walls and drains on the floor, and just kind of this idea that they've created in their mind of the monsters that senior living is. But then I also believe that we have tours that have said, well, I have seen 4 senior livings today, and in this memory care they had that thing. Do you have it as well? So there's this wide range. I will tell you that I recently was with a tour, and the family member that I was speaking with said, this is far exceeding my expectations. She had built it up in her mind as being a negative moment, because for her it was, because she loved someone living with dementia. It didn't matter if we were a castle up on a cloud, right? It was never going to be good enough for her king. And at least walking through and kind of feeling the environment, that's when some of her buying process really started to happen. So the knowledge is still needed, and I think it's a lot about the feel of a community that will get someone to say this might be a good solution for us.
Yeah, my sense has been that once somebody, and I think the data tends to bear this out in terms of move-in percentages, that once somebody actually spends time in a community or multiple communities, and they have some comparative points, that a lot of those preconceptions or misconceptions either vanish, or so much more nuance is added to that. I think the challenge that we think about on the sales and marketing side is, what about all the steps that lead up to feeling empowered, feeling ready to move, to actually just go look at a location, look at a building, tour a community. And are there ways that we can help people visualize what that might be like, either through media or through thought exercises, so that that focusing illusion they have that may be based on something completely inaccurate goes away. Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully that over the course of the webinar, we can move that 1 to 10 scale up to a few more percentage points. And Shelley, at some point, maybe if you're seeing anyone that was weighing in with their own 1 to 10 scales, we'll touch on that later. But for the rest of the conversation, so we want to get to the meat of it. I want to look at perspectives from older adults and family members themselves, and what are they telling us about how they make decisions. And to do that, I have to tell you just a little bit about Rubric, what we do and how this data is gathered. So we provide a decision support platform that senior living providers put on their websites to reach what we call the hidden market for senior living. And we define the hidden market as all the people actively researching senior living, but not moving forward because they're not sure it's the right time or the right choice. Rubric is designed to meet them in those moments, to get them educated, motivated, empowered, essentially to get them unstuck in a decision process. Most people think of us as a quiz or a survey, and that's kind of how they feel to someone on your website. We're a bit more sophisticated. We use a combination of decision science, empathy. I don't know if anyone's familiar with motivational interviewing, but these concepts to turn a prospect who is stuck into a prospect who's ready to move forward because they are empowered. they are more confident and they have a higher degree of trust for our senior living partners because they've shared this unbiased resource. The word that's used a lot in the decision science world is a nudge. And what we found is that by the time people are actually researching senior living on a provider's website, it's just a nudge that they need that says, okay, maybe I should go in and tour Maravilla or wherever I'm considering. So this is how the tools might look on a senior living website. Every data point that we're going to look at today comes from a prospect or a family member on a provider site actively researching senior living and looking for help. So unlike a lot of survey data, which is, hey, we called people up and asked them what they thought, this is in real time gathered data from people that are likely potential residents. After families go through the assessment, they get a personalized report that helps them understand their situation and options. At this point, they've answered 20 to 25 questions about their situation. And so when we're sharing this data today, it comes from the sorts of things that they're sharing with us and our partners over the course of the experience. In terms of scale, we're now the leading provider of tools like this. So we serve over 1,300 locations, communities across about 140 different providers, including folks like Belmont Village and Brightview, Health Peak, Merrill Gardens, Human Good. We work with single communities up to providers with well over 100, and we cover the continuum from active adult through memory care. So when we're looking at the data, we'll do some cuts that break that up a little bit, but many of you more data-focused people, I think, will probably quickly realize that the devil will be in the details. And I'm always happy to talk with folks after the call and say, well, if you're trying to answer a specific question, let's see if we can help out with that. Of all our stats, my favorite is around families helped, and that's a mission that Charles and I have shared from the beginning, and I know Melissa is on board with as well. By the beginning of this year, this translated to a prospect or family member using Rubric every 4.5 minutes. So in the 20 minutes we've been on this call, 5 families have gone through Rubric on a senior living website. We're going to share a lot of data, and all of this is current within the past year. And so without further ado, let's get into it. First, I want to look at the audience that we're talking about here. These tools are positioned and personalized for older adults researching for themselves, as well as family members researching for someone they care about. So blue is a family member or other assessor researching versus pink for self. And this chart breaks out those two audiences by community type. So for instance, in the middle, there are 65% of Rubric users researching IL and AL communities were family members, and 35% were older adults looking for themselves. Now, Melissa, I think I showed you this chart for about a second. So this is to disclaim Melissa's not supposed to have any expertise on any of that. She might have known what we're going to talk about, but we're going to get some real-time, I guess, perspective and reaction here. Is anything that kind of jumps out at you that either it may confirm exactly what you thought, or it may be something that was counter to your expectations?
Great question. I look at, of course, the memory care stat, and it is exactly what I expected it to be, right? 88% is going to be a family, and gosh, I'd love to meet those 12% of people that have this understanding that perhaps this is the support that they deserve. That's very interesting to me. But the independent living only actually is the one that's jumping out a bit more, that it's only 51% of folks that are self-assessors. So they're saying I'm looking for myself. So that means 49% is going to be a loved one of theirs saying this person may enjoy independent living. I would have thought it would have been bigger from the actual older adult.
Yeah, and I think when we and this may be an opportunity to to unpack some of that, or folks on the line may have some opinions as well. What our supposition and research has shown is that that family members start the process early as they notice changes, and they may think about their parents in their 60s or 70s and think about, well, I am noticing some changes. There is something that maybe we should be thinking about doing about this. So I'm going to go to that place down the street that looks nice, and it's an IL community, and I'm going to start start researching there. And then sure, I'll fill out this form, or I'll go through this assessment that says, is it the right time for senior living? But it is, I think one thing to remember about this data is it's all self-selecting. These are people that have self-selected to go to an IL community website or a memory care website, and then have self-selected to say, you know what, I'm not ready to fill out a contact form, but maybe I will kind of go through this exploratory exercise. I think one of the things that tends to surprise people is that older adults themselves are more willing across the continuum. And I think this speaks to your comment about that 12%. We've worked with a lot of folks on the sales and marketing side of the table who have been conditioned to believe that people don't want to talk about their own care, that they want to think about lifestyle. And that may be true, and I think that is true in certain settings. But what our data has shown is that regardless of whether or not they may want to talk about it, it's very much on their minds. But maybe they don't want to talk about it face-to-face with a live human today. Maybe when they come into a community and they can feel that empathy, they can kind of see some of the amenities that might be more care focused, that opens the door for them to do that. But what we found is that they really need to explore it in their own way, on their own time. And, that may be the focusing illusion again, coming into play and being something that's ever present in their decision process in those early stages.
That makes so much sense to me, because sometimes when we are posing, selling, and promoting our communities, we want everything to be sunshine and roses. I really want to tell you about the Tour de Zest, where we have our communities do a bike ride all month long, and we are competing with each other. And so we want to talk about those things in a positive light, but perhaps if I center myself just as a human, if I do have some care needs, I'm actually worried about that. The bike ride is cool, and I love hearing about it, but I also want to understand if and when I need help, what does that look like? And maybe that doesn't sound so sexy for the person selling, but it's the information that the person will need to make a good decision. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. And so we Melissa and I didn't prepare this ahead of time, but that is a perfect segue to the first question we're going to look at from the assessment. And I think this usually comes fifth or sixth in the questions that the rubric assessment asks. And so for each one of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pose the question and give you all, including Melissa, just a moment to reflect. And then over there on the right side of the screen, we're going to reveal the results. And so this question is essentially, why are you researching senior living? You're on a senior living site. What are you doing there? And it's designed to be honest and engaging, to let people articulate what they might be feeling, but then also give them the opportunity to pretend that, maybe we're not serious yet. Maybe we're just kind of scratching the surface. So let's talk about why you think it might be time to consider a move. You can choose more than one option. So this is a multi-select. I'm just curious. I think it might be time to consider downsizing. I'm concerned about care needs. I'm worried about a recent change. I'm worried about loneliness or isolation. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed and could maybe use some help. And let me look around my screen here. I worry about safety. And so a broad range of responses here that kind of run the gamut based on our research of the sort of categories of things that people tend to be thinking about, and give them a landing place that allows them to share some more information. Melissa, do you have any pre-guesses, or do you already know? Did you already look ahead?
Did not look ahead, and it just makes me think of something that we say at SRG, that buyers are liars.
Mm-hmm.
So how often do we have people say something like, "Oh, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Oh, I just came because I drove by," when that's not really the unmet need that they have. So if I had to guess, I'm going to say that's going to be a pretty high one.
Okay. Well, I'm so tempted to say survey says, because I grew up watching a little bit of Family Feud, but I'm gonna try and fight that urge. So this is across all respondents, so grain of salt there, and we'll do a little breakout in just a second. But the number one answer choice was care needs, followed by curiosity, then feeling overwhelmed, are both kind of neck and neck. Now, this is blended. So before we talk about this, I think it's probably more instructive to break it down by looking at audiences of an older adult looking for themselves versus a family member. Now, you'll notice I have a little change down here. For older adults, the answer choice is phrased around current or future needs rather than concern about care needs. And one of the things we do is personalize the assessment based on who's taking it. Now that's intentional, but it does change the intent of the question somewhat. And so I guess before I opine, how does this strike you, this myself versus family breakdown? And I'm happy to jump in as well.
Well, I definitely want to prompt some folks in the chat. If you have any thoughts here, I have fireworks going off on my head that overwhelmed is the highest for the families, right? The family may not be saying, I'm worried about, well, they're saying I'm worried about everything, essentially, right? So there's care needs, there's safety, there's loneliness, and overall, it's just worry. And so if I were to connect with someone in their unmet needs in a sales process, because I believe that selling in senior living is simply that I really believe in this place. This community is kind and it is supportive. And that's why I want to invite others to join us, stay here. And so if someone comes to me and says, I am overwhelmed, I am anxious, I am worried, well, hey, you're one of my new friends, and I want to make sure you don't feel that way anymore. If this place is going to help you with that, that's great. And if not, I want to be that advocate for you to help to find just any way to bring down that overwhelming moment. Gosh, that feels awful.
And overwhelmed is, well, real quick, I just want to say overwhelmed is a horrible mechanism for sharpening the focusing illusion. And then you'll think about when you're worried about something just in your life and you wake up at night, you're like panicking about one specific aspect of it that just is perseverating through your mind. And you do a horrible job of thinking about the nuance, the other aspects of it. And so when someone is feeling overwhelmed, they're focused on what feels like acute pain. And we say, we all use the word overwhelmed, but as we know, for a lot of people, this is acute pain that is consuming their day, and it's going to make their decision-making process that much more difficult. But it's also going to mean that when they find someone they trust or find a resource they trust, it's going to provide an immediate flood of relief. And so when someone like Melissa greets you at the door, or the hundreds of other people on this call that meet families on tours every day, if you know someone is overwhelmed, and a smile and some trust can take that out of the equation really quickly and allow someone to really focus on the other aspects of the decision process.
One last thought here, because then that makes a lot more sense for us. We want to explain everything that senior living is, and it's a lot. And the last thing that we probably want to do is continue to overwhelm the person with the 50 facts that we love about this place, right? So rather just identifying on what is that one thing that they really need and how can we help meet that for them, it's solidified right there in the data for me.
Yeah. Shelley, is the gallery sharing anything that we need to address post haste?
Now, the gallery is reinforcing a lot of what you're saying, especially Melissa, and reinforcing that what's startling here is looking at the differences from a self-assessor to the family members. And I think also recognizing Melissa's insight that we need to have these two different points of view in mind when we're talking to folks and they come in.
I think for people answering for themselves, my take is it's no surprise that just curious and downsizing rank highly. This is the language that allows someone to safely explore the life change without a lot of stigma. I do continue to be surprised by care needs being up there so high, but at the same time, there's that caveat that the way the answer choice is phrased around future care needs, it almost feels like the responsible answer. Like, yes, of course, years down the path, I want to have been thinking about that. It's a little bit different from saying I'm concerned about care needs today, which is the way the question is phrased for a family member that's going through it for someone else. Well, in the interest of time, let's keep moving. This is where we're going to get into activities, which is the whole point of this thing. And let me get to the next question here. What do you like to do on a good day? So here we invite respondents to imagine a good day. What you say, hey, that was a good day. What were the activities that made that up? And the goal here is to help them expand beyond a focusing illusion that might be a negative perception of senior living, and just think about the things they enjoy. Now, I know, Melissa, you cheated a little bit on this one because we talked about it ahead of time, but let's talk about it again. And I'm going to do the survey says here. So we've got this is everybody. We're going to do a breakout on this one as well, different breakout, not self versus other. I know you have strong opinions about the highest ranking choice here. What does that do to your soul?
I have thought long and hard about our first conversation about this, Nate, because when I look at my own life as an adult, the thing that I do consume a lot of is TV and podcasts. And so I would actually probably rate this the highest in my own life. But as a leader in senior living that supports leaders for engagement, we have rules at SRG about our calendars for Enliven, for memory care. We say we will have 3 things in the morning, 3 things in the afternoon, and at least 1 thing at night that enrich our body, our mind, and our soul. Movies and meals don't count, right? Like, sorry, team, I know that you're hearing that one ringing in your ears right now. And so, like, as an operator, I say we cannot host movies on our calendar because we could be more engaging. And then the customer is saying right here in black and white stats that movies are the things that bring a good day for them. That just recenters me to say I need to continue to listen to the older adults. It's not me that's so smart, it's their lives, right?
I think that's a good, humble insight, but at the same time, what I can't figure out is this a matter of, do we give the people what they want because they say what they want, or are people simply reporting what's happening today in the home in an environment that may lack other options and opportunities? And I think that's something that, we don't have that upstream data or that more nuanced data about those home situations. But I don't think it's necessarily, hey, the people say they want cake, so let's give them the cake. I think there's still something to unpack there that, and I don't think we're going to solve it today, but it does create an interesting perspective. And let me actually drill down a little bit to this one. Is we broke it out by people that received a lower acuity result versus people that received a higher acuity result, and it also reveals some interesting changes here. And I'll start with my perspective because I think you might be seeing this one for the first time. So low need, we see 2 things. We see that physical activity response is actually, I think, a walk or other physical activity is the way it's phrased in the question. But we see that rise to the top along with a good meal. But I also want to point out the shape of that curve there, that it's a much flatter curve. And we see people describing a richer life with more activities. We look at that same curve with people with elevated needs. That curve drops off more quickly. Perhaps their world has narrowed, or the perception of a family member that's completing this for someone of what their capabilities or interests might be has narrowed as well. And I wonder if that triggers any thinking based on your experience.
It makes complete sense the way that you are saying it, that when I look at someone with a lower care need, especially if we're talking about something like independent living, of course it's going to be flat because all of us have different likes. Yeah. As much as I enjoy spending my time, filling my time with too many podcasts, there are others that would never like to do that ever. And so we want to see older adults as humans that, of course, it's going to be across the board. The elevated need, again, makes sense that it's sliding down because maybe these are things I'm no longer able to participate in, or I just don't want to anymore. Nate, I know you and I talked about that this is a great data point, and I almost want to push you to expand it a little bit differently because I saw that Charles in the chat said that he loves bingo. And I'm wondering if we need to dig a little bit deeper into that. As an adult in my free time, I have never played bingo. I know people do. I know people go to the casino and they love it, right? It's just something that I have never done. It's something that I personally associate with senior living, right? This is something I do. And it's almost like what you were saying before. If I offer bingo or if I offer the movie, this is the easy, comfortable thing that everybody can like step in to do. What if we pushed ourselves just a little bit further to expand to wild underwater basket weaving classes? I don't know. Because someone may choose to step into something different for the first time.
I also don't mind. I haven't played in years, but it's fun. Some of the things that TV is fun. If there was an option for staring at my phone all day long, I'd unfortunately just have to report that I do that too much. But that wouldn't mean that if I were to move into a community setting, that means that I want to stare at my phone all day long. Again, even though maybe I do want some of that. Shelley, for the 600 people that you're representing on the Q&A, did any consensus or anything emerge that you think we should be thinking about?
Besides the fact that we could easily have a bingo league because everybody loves it. What I will say is that we are getting people like Melissa who are pushing for us, if we're going to ask a question like this, to get a little bit more specific and to broaden some of the categories. And it's interesting to think about if we had a category on here for creativity or for education and learning, if that would appeal to people. So that's a good part of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, well, and truly this scratches the surface. I personally don't like general categories where, oh yes, I like, spending time with friends and family, but not that family member, or not in this setting, or what kind of monster do you think I am? And so being able to, to break those down, and the way the tool is designed is when a sales advisor or counselor or someone brings this report into a community, it becomes a jumping off point to say, you mentioned, you like spending some time outdoors. Let's talk about that a little bit further. And some of that exploration can happen a little bit further downstream. But you're right, it is, or the gallery is right, that it is a little bit narrowing and kind of forcing people into certain boxes. Well, the kind of last core question we have, we've got a few other supplementary questions, but this really gets to that focusing illusion question as well. What are barriers to your decision process? And this is designed to start an honest dialogue about what's keeping someone from making a decision. And when you think of it, this comes towards the end. This is question 20 of 23. When you think about this decision, what would make it easier? And you can choose more than one here as well. Having a clear picture of senior living life, just feeling confident it's the right choice or the right time. Obviously, finances come into play. We wanted to explore what's the family dynamic like, and how might that be influencing the decision process. And we always give someone something else they're not sure. There's never a answer this question or you can't move forward sort of option here. So I am gonna hold your feet to the fire on this one, Melissa, and say, do you have a guess as to what the most common barrier is for broadly someone researching senior living?
Now that you have me thinking about the difference between the family member and the older adult, I think that those are going to be very different questions. I can commonly financial is what we hear on tours, or at least that's what sales leaders will tell us, that that financial piece is always the one that we're squabbling about. But maybe the readiness of the adolder adults is also going to be a big factor. No, not now. Sometime in the future when it's worse.
Well, you're absolutely right about the financial piece being large and looming. What I will say is this self-selects for people that said, hey, I want to answer 20 questions about senior living, which is still a large audience, but it's not meant to represent everyone coming to a senior living community or website. But for the people that need that nudge, that intervention, this has been incredibly consistent over the years, that what we found is people want to know what's going to happen and what's it going to be like. They have this focusing illusion about aging and moving to a community, but really, like all of us, maybe they're a little scared. My life is going to change. What's it going to be like? And, you know, so we try and I think encourage sales and marketing approaches that expand beyond the physical space and meals and activities. You know, how can you paint a picture of daily life, and not just the activities, but the moments in between? What will the mundane moments feel like? What will it feel like to be bored here instead of bored at home? Will it be silly? Will it be serious? Life is rich and varied, and how will it feel in your community with your residents and your team? And that's a different picture to paint, but it's, I think if some of that barrier is not just, will I have a nice place to swim or have dinner? And it's more like, what's all of life going to be like? Now, that's a hard question to answer, but if you can fill in some of those more mundane gaps, then I wonder if there's an opportunity to, again, build some of that trust and help people overcome this focusing illusion of, I know what my life today is like because I live it every day. I have no idea what it's going to be like for 24 hours a day when I'm living with you.
Totally. And you actually have, again, fireworks going off in my brain about essentially what this is saying is, I don't know what will happen in the future.
Yeah.
And that does have something to do with the decision about choosing your housing, but it's also just in general, none of us know what's going to happen in the future for ourselves tomorrow or for the older adults that we love 3 years from now. So of course, that's a big decision and thought process that someone must go through. How do we articulate, well, this is what life is like at one of our communities, because we actually can't give them that crystal ball of the future, but rather we can tell them when you were bored here, it might be pretty silly.
Yeah. And all is the caveat of no audience is a monolith, and the things that you all do so well of meeting an individual and treating them like an individual has to always rule the day. But if we can, you know, today and in the future help you all think through, well, maybe I'll ask myself a question around what their focusing illusion might be as I'm meeting them, and see if there's something that, you know, if it provides some additional perspective in those interactions, maybe there's some value there.
Right. I think something like, what do you hope will be part of this community, or what do you fear you will find at this community, so we can really speak to if that's real or not.
Yeah. No, exactly. Maybe we'll try and go through see if we have one or two more real quickly here, and then maybe a couple of minutes for Q&A. Does that seem, I guess we're running out of time. This is one that we spent a minute on ahead of time. Let's talk about how, you mentioned readiness, how ready your mom might be for a change. Would she be open-minded about discussing changes at home or moving somewhere where more help is available? And I'll just go ahead to show the result here. And we do have a breakout here. I think it shows a little greater readiness than people might assume. And I think that gets a little bit more interesting when you break that out by myself versus family, where I think when you and I looked at this before, Melissa, you kind of assumed that people doing it for themselves were going to be in more in the not at all category, but it's almost an identical ratio there.
It is. It is. So maybe I have that illusion about older adults that are searching today, assuming they assume the worst. And that's a double assumption, a horrible idea for anybody. Yeah, so maybe folks are educated a bit more than I understand. And if they're willing to say, 50% almost are saying, I can see this for me. This would be a benefit. I think that's awesome. I think that's what we've wanted in senior living for a long time.
Yeah. And again, you got to remember the context, which is they're on a community website. They've gotten so far down the funnel of, I've noticed a change, but by the time they're on your website, they found you. Your marketing team has done a fantastic job, branding team, bringing them to your community, that they're already a lot farther along than we might assume. And I think that's an important insight. And certainly by the time they've gotten in their car and are riding over to see a location.
So I have a question for you then. If this
Okay.
is someone that's ready to buy, they're on the website, a
Yeah.
family member that responds not at all.
Mhm.
What does that
Um,
data tell us?
So this is a family member reporting on behalf of, so maybe they selected mom or dad at the beginning. And here they're
Okay.
saying, I don't think mom or dad are ready. And that becomes a conversation point with when they do talk with someone in the community to be able to say, it sounds like your mom or dad might be a little bit reluctant here. Let's talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
That's fair. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Now, you've done a lot more of these than I have, and so the Q&A, should we check in and see if there's some things that I think we've got about 5 or 6 minutes, and if there's not, we've got a couple more questions we can look at.
I think we should phone to Shelley.
Shelley, what do we got?
In our Q&A, this one isn't exactly, it came up earlier, but I'll throw it out there. Martina was asking if we think that if money was not an issue, more prospects would join CCRCs. And I'm not sure if both of you have an opinion on that.
My opinion from the sales and marketing side of the coin is, I think 100%. I think, if we look back at that question, that financial was still number 3 or 4 on a pretty flat curve there. So we see that being a major barrier, not just in what we see within Rubric, but when we work with sales and marketing provider, early sales and marketing teams at the community level, that cost is always a perennial issue. And so I think if you were to find a magical way to remove that from the decision process, you'd need to build a lot more CCRCs pretty quickly. My impression. Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and this sort of flew by in the chat, which has been very active. Rosa brought up the point that as much as we're talking about in an earlier question about how folks imagine life would be and everything that's offered, and we had a lot of great suggestions about what's going on in communities. She also brought up the point that sometimes we may be just overwhelming prospective residents and residents, not just with information, but with activities and with everything that, you don't have to do 12 things in a day to get a high benefit from being here. And some people do enjoy downtime and quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, Shelley. I saw some folks saying in the chat that they do invite, prospective residents or family members to come and join an engagement or come for a meal so that they can have that feel versus the data dump of, let me explain to you all the things that we have. Personally, from the memory care side, I always invite family members to just sit in our living room. If you want to truly understand who we are and what we're doing, just be a fly on our wall for as long as you would like, because there's no secrets here. And so then maybe that prospective family member can feel the reality. It's not going to be perfect. It is memory care, but we are hopefully going to lead with love so that they can understand that we all have the same goal in mind.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that plays right into that notion of what are the quieter moments in between the activities and other opportunities, like and then to take it up to that values level is such a powerful tool to say, yes, these are the details, but we always align ourselves around this very simple and empathetic principle of leading with love. Feels like that's got to be a pretty quick trust earner when you're able to have that conversation in a community. I know we're supposed to leave a couple minutes at the end. Charles, we want to do one more question. Should we do one more real quick, and then give Charles?
Yeah, please go ahead, Nick.
Minutes?
This is amazing.
Okay.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
This one is actually was intended to get at potential cognitive or other behavioral health concerns for people that might be a little bit before the memory care end of the spectrum. But we know for many people, they notice changes long before they engage with the formal health or care system. And it's these changes that bring them to the internet looking for answers. So for this one, let's talk about some changes you might have noticed. Do you think that you or your mom has lost some interest in daily activities? And this one has an overall breakout but then it's
Mm.
got a low need and elevated need breakout. I think when you get to this breakout by acuity, you get to a much starker story. People with low need will overwhelmingly say no, or just a little, but those with elevated need will say a lot and by a wide margin. And this is, in some ways, this is sort of a well, duh question, but I think it ties back to that good day question of, changes in ability and disposition. I think people equate with a loss of interest in daily activities. What this doesn't get at is what sorts of new or different activities might this person who was lost interest in current day activities now find engaging. And I think that's where all of your work comes in. So if the focusing illusionist said, mom just doesn't like to do much anymore, I think you have the opportunity to say, oh, but she does, and she can, and that's our job to maybe create a little bit more of a world where there are things that weren't part of phase one of life and are now part of phase two. That I hadn't really looked at this question in this way until Melissa and I started talking, and now I've got kind of a new perspective on it.
I think I shared a quick story with you, Nate, about when I was an executive director. I loved a woman that lived in our memory care, and the family wanted the best and biggest and most beautiful room for her because they said she stayed in her house in the dark for the last 5 years, no radio, no TV. So she won't leave her room. And within 2 days, they were in my office quite upset with me because we had lost her. Of course, I jumped up to try to find this person. And indeed, she was not in her room, but that's because she was in the life enrichment room, decorating cupcakes and licking frosting off her fingers. The family never expected for that to be something that their loved one would participate and step into. And yes, her abilities and her activity had changed significantly over the time she was previous to living with us. But once we gave her that opportunity, it was pretty easy. Do you want to decorate cupcakes? Of course I do. No problem here.
Yeah. Well, and that takes us right back to the beginning of what we think we want or what we say we want versus what the reality might be. There's obviously not an easy answer, but I think, again, thinking through as much of that as we can as we navigate our days ahead, hopefully will provide some new perspective. Charles has jumped in now, so I'm going to back off with a thank you, Charles, for the opportunity, and thank you, Melissa, for joining us today.
Yeah, no, thank you both. I'm sorry an hour and 60 minutes and not 120, but I'm pretty sure that, as you saw in the chat, it was a highly engaging education. I think, like we said before, I really believe this is one of the biggest topics in senior living, and I think we all agree it really relates to trust. There was an audience member, Joanne, recognizing obviously that it's their home, right? And what's more important than the home, the sense of belonging. But what I do like is some of your final comments, which is that in the end, it does come down to like something pretty important, which is we got to listen, right? We got to listen. Listening to our prospect, listening to our residents and families is super important. So with that, I really want to thank you both for joining and having this really interesting discussion point. As a note to all the audience members, feel free to contact us, any of us, if we have any questions. But one thing I do want to kind of bounce on this idea of listening. I'd like to challenge you all of one thing that you could all do is that Nate and his team were very grateful of their time and actually created a tip sheet for us to really understand how to elevate this discussion that we just had today, but also to bring it back home at our workplace, I should say, but with our teams, right? So if you are in the activity, life enrichment, resident engagement, please download this piece and walk over to your marketing and sales department. And if you're marketing and sales, do the same, because in the end, we do serve one goal, which is to elevate the life of our residents. And the more we're tuned to that, the better we can bridge what Melissa and Nate started to explain to us today. And hopefully this can help you obviously improve your day, right? Selfishly you, but also improve the work of your teams and your communities. And again, in the end, the life of our prospect, our future residents and our residents. So with that being said, again, Melissa and Nate, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, great.
A couple of last announcements. we started last couple weeks ago doing these Unleash Your Activity Strong Inner Sparkle with our host, Brian Rice. And these are very informal discussions on Facebook Live. The next one is on February 15th at 3 p.m. And we have a very special guest called Nancy Griffin. And she has a publication called Senior Trained, and she's the host of an amazing podcast called Glowing Older. And that's announcement number one. Announcement number two is that one of our biggest events of the year, and I would say one of the biggest of the year, event of the year when it comes to dementia care and experience, we're doing this in partnership last year with the Validation Training Institute, and that's going to be on February 21st. And last but not least, on March 7th, we had a very interesting discussion about equity in aging and the fact that it begins with memory support, right? And that's an amazing, obviously it applies throughout our different level of care, IL, AL, memory care, and obviously the nursing home. But it's this idea that equity is a human right. And so how do we apply for anyone that has started or is about to start any kind of cognitive journey? So I'm done with my announcements. And one last time, Nate, Melissa, thank you so much. Hope to have you soon again. And thank you again for your contributions today. Take care.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Good night.